In this video, I continue the shakedown of my newly acquired 2004 WRX. The previous owner stated that it had warped rotors on the front, and that was why you would get a pretty bad shake when you hit the brakes. So last time, I was replacing the pads and the rotors on the front, and that is when I encountered the stuck caliper. So in this video, I install a new caliper and encounter another issue. Thankfully, I was able to pick up a caliper locally, and the color isn't going to match, but this will allow me to drive the car and use it for what I intended to use it for. Maybe at some point down the line, I will rebuild the other caliper so that they will all be the pretty purple, but that's not in the cards for now. I just want it to work. In the last video, I detailed how I removed the caliper to replace the pads and rotors. It's the same process, but this time, I'm replacing the caliper itself. The only step that is not in the previous video is swapping over the brake line. Thankfully, this is getting most of the old pad residue off, and I can put the fresh one on. Now the back only made contact with the new one, so I've only driven it in my driveway just far enough to pull my wife's car in here to do an oil change. So thankfully, it didn't heat up or wear into the new rotor. I mean, it did a little bit, but I can live with this. So I mounted the new caliper, put the new pads back in, connected the brake line, and bled the brakes. Next up was to drive it for a day. The crazy vibration during braking was gone, but there was still another issue. So I got to drive the WRX to work, 25 miles, most of it highway, and it feels like I need the wheels to be balanced. So I'm gonna take them off, throw them in the Civic, and hopefully tomorrow morning get them balanced. So after getting the wheels balanced on the WRX, I drove it 50 miles and it still vibrates. So now I am thinking bearings. So I jacked the Subaru up and put it in gear. It's now in second gear, spinning freely. And I think what I have is a stuck caliper. I already replaced the one on the driver's side. The wheel wants to move, but the caliper is grabbing a little bit. So this is the new caliper, and as you can see, the back one's spinning fine, but the front, yeah, see this one, it wants to spin. But this caliper is stuck. So I'm gonna start there. So I am going to replace this pretty caliper with the Subaru markings on it with this rebuilt caliper from O'Reilly's. The other one works fine, so hopefully this will fix my issue, but if it doesn't, it'll make it a lot easier to diagnose whether or not I have a bad bearing. So what I'm going to do is remove this caliper while leaving the brake line attached, install the new caliper, and then swap over the brake line, hoping to lose only a little bit of fluid. We'll see how that goes. So this is the back side of the caliper, and I'm going to remove this bolt and that one with 17mm ratcheting wrench and socket. Or rather, I'm just going to remove them both with the ratcheting wrench. So now I'm going to set this one aside, and I'm going to use a bungee cord to hold it up. Let's see, will that hang nicely? That'll work. Now I'm going to put the new one into position. Actually, I should have taken out the pads first, but that shouldn't be too hard. Let's see. Again, it's easier to take the hardware and the pads out before you do this, but I didn't. But yeah, you see, it's not so bad. Not so bad. So I'm just going to slide the new pads in. There we go. And I don't know how necessary it is to put lube on these rods that hold the pads in, but I am going to do it. Not a lot, but just a little. That is weird, huh? It normally had a color to it. I wonder if temperature did something to it. In any event, they're going in now. So this clip goes into that hole there and that hole there, and this little hook part goes into this hole here. And I've had luck by putting one in, then the other. Of course, you got to line them up right, and then putting the clip in like that. And when it's all said and done, that is what you'll have. Well, depending on how stiff the spring is, I can usually push it in with my finger. But this time I might get a little assistance. That's it, a little rubber mallet will probably work. But there, that's nice and secure. So now I just have to transfer over the brake line. So let's see if I can do this without losing a lot of brake fluid. I got the new bolt ready. Let's see if my little baby impact will take this off. All right, cool. So I'm already dripping. Come on. All right. I still spilled more fluid than I would have liked, but maybe not as much as I would have otherwise. So now the only thing connecting this to the car is the bungee cables. So now I'm going to bleed the brakes. I do not have a flare wrench that is small enough. I mean, a flare nut wrench that is small enough to get this. So I'm using my socket. I'm going to put this on the end to crack as I bleed. So hopefully that's enough. We will see. So there's the tube. Nice to get the full tube in view. Glorious. All right, let's see if this is enough. I'm going to give it 5 to 10 more pumps, and then I'll move on to the next one. All right, that one's good enough. And these don't have to be gorilla tight, just snug. All right, so this is the front right. Now I'm going to the left rear. All right, now if you jack your car up high enough, you can leave the tire on. Leave the wheel on and do this. So again, luckily these you can access with a socket. On older cars, you round these off pretty easily. That's why flare nut wrenches are the king. All right, so let's see if that's enough to get it to flow. The brake bleed pattern for this car is an X pattern, starting at the front right, then going to the rear left, then going to the front left, and coming back to the rear right. And that was good enough. There was hardly any air in that line. So I gave it exactly 20 pumps. 20 pumps. And since it's easier with the socket, I'm gonna tighten it with the socket. Put the dust cap back on and then do the front left. So I did see a little fluid coming down the side of the caliper. That means that some was getting between the caliper and the bleed nipple. But since I'm troubleshooting other things, I'm gonna call that good enough because the tube was full of fluid and any little bit of air that got in should not cause the wheel to bind up and stop me from troubleshooting this vibration I'm having. So I'm gonna continue to the last one. Same drill. Look how much cobwebs there are up here. I wonder how often this car was driven. Ugh. Doesn't look like much. So the last one looked good. Chop off the reservoir one last time. The real test will be driving it at highway speed, but let's see if when I put it in gear, all four wheels rotate now. All right, so that solves the problem of the sticking front calipers. And now the braking feels perfect. It stops really smooth. But I still do get a bit of vibration at highway speeds. So I guess in upcoming videos, I'll chase down why it's still there. If you'd like to follow along, hit subscribe. Thanks for watching. Take care.